DoALL V36 Refurb. So this is a 1941 model. First thing we added were these rotating blade guides, something we designed quick. So here's the guide. You can see there's a couple of keyways in there. So what this allows, the blade rotates on about a 25-degree angle, and then it goes from being a 36-inch continuous throat down to 28. But the advantage is that it can do 17-inch depth of unlimited length. So that was what we were really going for, is having a lot of versatility in this machine. So to change the angle, all that needs to happen is you pull up on the guide, the blade can be in there, and then drop it back down. If we did it again, we'd probably just use some pins, because the fitting the keys it took some time. It was complicated, and it took a bunch of figuring out. So that's what the guide looks like. There's more pictures on our Instagram. If you look there, Community Machinery. This is the bottom holder. So it's just a pretty simple 1-inch aluminum block. There's a piece of round tubing welded on the bottom. That key is welded in from the back side. 1/2-inch socket head cap screws, and that just mounts down under the table. Actually, if we look under here, you can see where we put in a plate which allows for a guide that also rotates. These have not been cut yet. We're just going to put this back together. But before we do that, let's show all the parts. So that's the number one thing. So the other thing is to make this really versatile, because we've also got a Hyde Mech S20P Series 2, which you can see way back there. Anyhow, that's a great saw. We'll have some other videos on that. It uses a 13-foot 6-inch blade, and we can use the same 1-inch 13-foot 6 blade on this V36. So that's a big deal, because that reduces inventory in terms of spare blades. If we mess up a blade on one of the saws in a pinch, we can borrow from the other saw, or if we need a pitch that's fine or coarse, we can try different things without buying something special. So that's a big deal. And the other thing, from having that S20P, that 1998 model, the one thing we really like about that is you can stand in the same spot with the hydraulics, control the vise, control all the settings for the head, where other models you have to walk around if it's got a manual vise, or when they put some operator consoles on the far side, or when you rotate the head, you can basically stand in that one spot, reduce motion. That's a big lean principle. Anyhow, I won't get into that other than to say we moved all these controls to this side from the other side. Now, this being an older model, different tools are going to do different things. The other thing we changed, I forget where the switch, on-off switch was, but we put it on the front here because the idea was to someday have a readout for how many feet per minute the blade is traveling. Other big update, everyone always jokes about the asbestos cutting speed on these old turn dial DoALL bandsaws. Anyhow, we got the updated sheet that gives all the up-to-date specs as far as what blades and feeds and speeds and more recent materials that are relevant. Added that and then cut these to fit and make a more contemporary design, put it on a sheet of 1/8 aluminum, and that was a great improvement. I'll show you this switch box here, which is made out of aluminum plate. Pretty simple thing. The other thing that was a big deal, this had a knob that hung down, so we made, I forget if this is just a piece of round bar. Anyhow, you figure out how to make one of those. Oh. So basically that pin, we try not to have it fall out like that, but the pin goes in like this, and if you want it tucked out of the way, you can just pop it around. See, now there we go, just like that, and it stays out of the way. So that's a big deal. One of the things I would love, one place I worked, there was a crank on the side that seemed to have I imagine it was a worm gear that would crank this up and down, because with this setup here, with this, it's a rack and pinion gear on the end of this knob. It could allow the blade guide to fall because it's got a lot of weight, especially with this rotating guide. So that's not my favorite thing. We added a Kraus-Heinz spotlight, or I don't know what the heck you call it, flood lamp holder, and a piece of aluminum 1/2-inch pipe and this plate. We got the lock line for the air. We don't have an air pump hooked up yet, but that's someday, that'll happen. Other thing is we moved the electrical panel to the front. In that box, there's a motor starter. There's the room for some air solenoids, pneumatic solenoids when we do that for the blow off. And then the blow off switch will fit in this box, as well as our readout for blade speed. Other feature that I'm really happy with, the motor cover from the saw was missing. So it had compound curves on these top corners, and I wasn't going to spend the time, we weren't going to spend the time working on that. So we made it like a traditional toolbox lip, where if we put a rubber mat on there or even just left it as it is, it's a handy spot when working on the saw, so all the parts don't collect up top like they are right now. And the other win was this storage spot for spare blade. Hopefully eventually we'll get a blade welder and have that set up, because that's really nice for being able to weld a blade inside an odd shaped part, be able to cut the blade back out. So we've got the spare blade there, and then this is spare parts that we have not put on yet, that someday maybe, probably when there's a job that requires it. And then added some expanded metal for the motor vent. We have a 208 3 horsepower motor picked up. That was salvage, a salvage ball door motor. Oh, other big thing, you see the eye here. So we looked at some later DoALLs and figured out where the center of gravity would likely be, and then put in some, looks like 3/8 to a ½ inch plate. There's one horizontally here, one vertically, and we made just enough room for that nut, because where it was showing the balance point was, meant that that eye bolt had to be over as far that way as possible. So that's another thing we did. And other thing, there's a video of the pivot from here broke when one day when we were cleaning off all the old paint, we had the forklift outside, a gust of wind. I wasn't sure because we had the forklift, thought it was a gust of wind because a neighbor said, oh, the wind blew it over. I was watching. Anyhow, this thing tipped over. The casting that pivots this broke. So there's some pictures on our Instagram of making the parts for that and how we calculated the measurements really quick in the vise on the milling machine with the digital readout. And we also made this prop rod, which isn't the best design, but it's what we got. Got a little bracket here. We'd probably do that different if we did it again, but I didn't really want to try and figure out a gas shock. Other thing, oh, we added reinforcing plates up here because this die spring inside the counterweights to pick up the cover had broken. So you can see these reinforcements here are all changed to get around our switch box, to stiffen up the cover and to add some strength. And we relocated that die spring chain bracket, whatever this thing is here, and that got it done. Just a little bit of patching and making things happen. I think that covers the main points of this video. Please comment below if there's questions you have, and I'll try and cover it maybe when we get more work done on this bandsaw. Hopefully that was helpful. I know a lot of people are passionate about these old DoALLs. I know personally, I think this one has been a way bigger project. It's one of those, if we knew what a big project it was, we wouldn't turn around and do it. But hopefully, if you're in the middle of one of these or thinking about it, you'll see this and it'll be helpful. It'll be some inspiration on what you could do. Anyhow, here it is. There's the bottom. We'll do the full little tour here. And I'll let you get back to your day without being long-winded. All the best.